Yeah, 248.
No, it's Susan 610. But there is a 248 on there, but they don't have their hand up.
Okay, well, I've been talking with him about stepping into and doing some work on a worksheet, so maybe we could go ahead and see what's happening and give him an answer. He probably didn't understand putting his hand up.
Okay. But I will turn on the microphone for 248. You're on the air.
Hi. How does one put their hand up here?
You press one on your phone.
Oh, press 1. Oh.
Yep.
There you go. But we got you.
But I got you turned on.
So you don't even have to do that.
Okay.
So how do you be, young man?
Right. Not well.
Life is giving you opportunities to learn forgiveness today again? Still?
Apparently, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So how can we support you?
Michael. I'm really angry today. I'm having a hard time physically. I was malpracticed upon by a doctor, and I'm suffering from a lot of brain trauma and inability to walk well, or think all that clearly, and I just was talking to an insurance person who told me that the doctor I did finally see to fix it is a doctor that she would not have seen. I thought, oh, good, more malpractice. Before that, 3 or 4 years before that, there was a neurologist who totally, in terms of not telling me what the problem was and how to get it handled in a timely manner. And so as a result, it seems that I've got, it could be a permanent condition of inability to walk or do much of anything. So, so that's kind of it today, Michael. That's kind of it. But I've got a 16-year-old daughter to take care of, and I'm only 74. This is not how I had planned to live my last 10 or 15 years.
I hear that. So what's the main, if you were to put a word to it, the main emotion that's going on for you right now?
Anger. Or outrage, maybe. Outrage. Okay.
Well, in my experience, anger is always an internally produced drug that anesthetizes against feeling something deeper. And it sounds like you've got lots to feel some pretty deep emotion about.
I think grief would be a huge one.
Yeah, that sounds like the core of it. And as you just sit with it, is your mind pointing it toward the doctor, toward your life situation? Where's your mind if you were to say, I'm really enraged at, outraged?
Well, I can sure point fingers at the doctors, but I'm really feeling grief about my life situation. This is not how I planned to live my last 20 years. Yeah.
Right. Well, the first thing I'll do is I'll just join you in taking a couple of breaths. And, one of the fastest way to healing is getting back to a connected space of love so that at least there's a power supply for cells to recover what can be recovered and be at peace with what can't. Would you like to step into doing a worksheet?
Yes, I'm there now.
Okay. Do you have a copy of the worksheet there, the 7-step?
I'm looking at healing the whole woman, the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual connections, the whole being, from your website.
Okay. And what is the worksheet titled that you're looking at?
Current 7-step wake-up sheet.
7-step. Okay. Perfect. So
that's the one you want me on?
That'd be the one. you don't have a, so are you looking at the live one that you can actually do on the website?
Yes.
Cool. Okay.
That's a great idea.
So as you you look at that page, it starts out and talks about looking at the fact that reality is a construct of the mind. Perception is something that my mind sets up, and ultimately, whatever life situation we're in, whatever's going on in our world, we're going to have a much better chance of handling it with grace and positive outcomes if we remain connected to love rather than in old emotional traumas. And so the idea of forgiveness.
I'm not seeing that on this wake-up sheet, what you just said.
Okay. So again, I'm not sure exactly. I thought you'd have a printed one, but I'll just go through the first couple of thoughts
Here,
at the very top of the worksheet.
I can go to Facebook and message you the link to where I am. Would that help?
Yeah, you could do that, and I can be there step by step with you.
Actually, the easiest way would be if you go to just the why again and click. There, you scroll down a little bit, and there's a quick print, and it says wake up sheet, and it goes directly to the current wake up sheet.
Whyagain.org?
Yep.
And you want me to go to the free forgiveness support wake up sheets, or what?
You can do that. You can if you click on Start Here up in the top left corner.
Oh yeah, okay.
Okay, and then scroll down, and there's one that says it's like the third link down. It says Stress Reality Wake Up Sheets Mini Versions. So if you go to that page, and then the first one on the page is the current 7-step.
Or if you still have a live one access there, I followed your link, John, so I've got the same thing on my page as you've got with that live one, if that's still easy.
Current 7-step wake-up sheet, reality management, all that?
That's it.
Okay.
So the idea, if we read through it, and Jeannie, for anyone else who wants to follow along with that one, the easiest way to get to the live worksheet, sweetie, on the site?
If you go to the, hold on just a second, sweetheart. If you go to the same page that I said, go to Start Here and then down to the Reality Stress Management, and then you scroll down. Oh, where is it? It's not there. I'll have to put it on that one then.
Okay. Here, Jeannie.
Yeah.
John had just sent me a link to that page.
Oh, there's actually a link that says Wake Up Sheets to be completed online. So if you go to the Start Here and then just scroll down, Wake Up Sheets to be completed online, and then you click there and it takes you directly to it.
Current 7-step. Yeah, perfect. So we'll just go through each step there. My apology for the delay, John. So reality management, wake up sheet, change your mind, change your life. And the definition of reality, my perceptual output constructed by my mind. And that it notes that this is a tool for waking up from and changing the output of the mind, my reality. So there's a premise that goes along with this whole body of work, and that's the first thing stated in the worksheet, belief, that introduction. My essential nature as human life, my very being is love. And of course, if one forgets about that, you can go back to the time when you first held your daughter and tap into her essence. And the goal of this internal forgiveness wake-up sheet is to empower me to remove fear and/or hostility and return to the direct experience of love, 24/7, 365. So the first step is my emotional upset level. So on a scale of 1 to 10, there's 0 to 10. What would be your level of upset?
That would
We're
be
at a 10. Okay. And then the first step in every time one goes into the forgiveness process, we suggest that you clarify in your mind and proclaim who you are. So you put your name in number 1A, I, and you put your name in.
Oh,
that's
what that is.
So you're starting out with a statement of clearly who you are.
Okay, so I have I, John, is in the first number 1A.
Right. Whom love. I'm experiencing. Identify your emotions. So what would be the most accurate word? We threw out 2 or 3 earlier.
Well, grief.
Grief. Okay, let's do.
Grief and yeah.
Okay.
Sadness.
Well, let's go. Each different emotion we'll see as we unfold it has a different thought behind it, and what we're looking to do is capture the root of the thought. And when that is exposed to love, then the feeling that comes from that thought starts to shift. So what we suggest is each different feeling would be a separate worksheet. So let's do the grief feeling here. So 1B would be grief.
Yeah.
And then, as it says, use a separate worksheet for each emotion. Hostility and fear are from internal corrupt data and indicate my use of sustained incoherence to build this disturbing internal construct. And that idea of sustained incoherence is something that comes from the work of a man named David Bohm, who was a physicist, actually a cohort of Einstein, worked in Einstein's lab for some time. And this guy, as a physicist, also worked in the realm of the mind. And he came up with this idea of sustained incoherence, and that what humans do is they get locked into a channeled way of thinking, creating emotions, and then externalize that and think that it's something coming from outside of them, not realizing that it's their thinking that's creating their emotion. And to sustain or to keep thinking that way is to live in what he defined as sustained incoherence. So when my mind keeps going back to the same energy over and over and over again, according to David Bohm, that would be sustained incoherence, and that's how I get stuck in this internal construct. And if you look at, there's certainly a whole complex of things going on here you've acknowledged. And if you look at how much of your life has been taken up by that merry-go-round of feelings, hostility, rage, grief, sadness, how does that look like? How much of your life has been,
since this happened, 75%.
And how about before this happened? Once again, if you just looked at this kind of complex that's going on, is it something you recognize from many times in your life?
Not the grief. No.
If you look at situations or circumstances where maybe change has been imposed on you from the outside, or so it seemed, it was change you didn't really want to make or engage in.
Yeah,
is this a complex? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I've had that.
Okay. So the next step is moving into the idea of denial, and in this work there's a specific definition for that word denial, and that is that when I think or speak as though something outside of me is a cause of what's moving inside of me, then I have to hide the root of what's happening inside of me. And anger as a drug is one of the ways that we hide things from ourselves. You look at the famous song for the alcoholic is what? Feeling no pain. And how do I get to feeling no pain? I just take more and more of this substance in, and I'm anesthetized. And so the offering of this, that when I go into denial, and CBM basically speaks of the fact that our bodies are made, the base element is carbon, and that's where our memory is stored. So when I think or speak as though something outside of me, this is imposed by what they did and not the way I plan my life, then it displaces, my mind then generates a construct based in pain that blocks or displaces my experience of myself as the truth of who I am, as love, and tells me the lie that my emotions are caused by what's going on outside of me, by my trigger. And so that's just kind of a preamble to now keying into what's the story, what's the story behind my reality. So my story, my reality is that, and here you name the object of attention. And so this grief, would the object of attention then just be my life?
So you're saying under D, the truth is only my
number
thoughts. Where we at?
So we're number 1C. My story, my reality is that.
Oh, my story, my reality is that oh, I see. I had doctors' names down there before I was looking at malpractice. Is that my life? Okay, I do that.
So then the first box would be my life.
My life.
And the second box.
Yeah.
So what, if you were to put it in a succinct way, what would you be saying about your life and the situation you're in now?
It's greatly handicapped, diminished. My opportunities for enjoying life are just minimal. I had to move away from my 16-year-old daughter because of this problem I've got. Yeah.
Okay.
My life sucks. I'm not sure where to go with all this.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty good story, and what we're going to invite you to do is you really contemplate that whole thing that's going on, is that you breathe. You make sure, notice as you went through that, how was your breath moving? Were you breathing? If you really just observed yourself as you talked about those challenges.
Probably not.
Okay.
Probably not much.
And then, if this were a worksheet you were doing, and you've got a slightly different situation. If this were a worksheet you'd be doing on a person, then this next thought, if they're the one with the problem, why am I the one with the pain? So, generally one would be in a situation where, well, Harry made me angry. And so if I'm angry, if I'm the one that's got the pain, then, why am I focusing on Harry? I need to be focusing where the pain is. In this case, it's life, so it's not quite as crisp and clear as it would be with a person. And so from there, recognizing that, so I've got an energy in me that's creating pain, and if I take charge of this energy field, I can remove this energy that's creating this emotional trauma and pain. And do you suppose, with the life circumstance that you're in, and I know you've shared quite a bit with me privately about what's been happening with your health, could, at this moment, at this juncture, if you could be in perfect peace and rid yourself, and we've talked before about, some of the work you've done previously calls traumas held in the body samskaras. In this work, we're talking about realities. It's just energetic patterns that we hold. And so how do you suppose your options would be, and how would you be feeling if you could bring love present to just what is at this moment, rather than all the interpretations your mind puts on it? Do you suppose that you might be in a space where you could move forward differently than you are now with this obviously very disturbing complex of energies, grief, rage? It's like a mixed ball going on for sure. And I certainly hear you loud and clear.
start with lightheadedness in my brain. It is like kind of like a mental nausea I have right now, which is the physical sensations I'm feeling.
So it's probably impacting your inner ear then, balance, that sort of thing. I know you've talked before about balance being a challenge.
Yeah, it's I don't know that the ear doctor said it wasn't my ears, it was the hydrocephalus, the
right.
too much cerebrospinal fluid in the brain.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's creating a pressure that's throwing balance off, and similar to what the ear would be, but it isn't really involving your ear. Okay, well, that's a good clarification. So if I were to choose to just look at this whole thing from a place of true connected love and have none of those realities or samskaras moving that are causing rage and grief, fear, sadness, loss, the whole complex of things.
Yeah.
What thought would I need to let go of?
This is horrible. This will always be this way.
It's your life condition.
I mean, imagine if they amputated your legs tomorrow and that was your condition. What would you know?
It'd be tough.
Yeah, that's kind of how it is. I mean, it's like every freaking morning I wake up and this is the deal.
Right. So how would it be, how would life be if you could rid yourself of the emotional component, and that's going to take some serious work, and wake up every morning in the condition, in the state that you're in, and be at peace and connected to love through that? Do you suppose your life experience would be different?
Yes, I'm sure it would be.
I mean, you've been dealt a pretty tough hand, and I can go raging into the night with that tough hand, or I could breathe and be centered in peace and let go of the energetic patterns that keep me in trauma around this situation.
Uh-huh.
So the thoughts are, this is horrible, my life condition, I think that was the word used earlier.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then to the next step, number 1E.
It will always be this way. I can't do what I really want to do in life. This is getting worse.
And
God mess me up.
Yeah, let's imagine that all of that's true. It's getting worse. There's nothing you can do about it. What would your state and the possibilities be like if you were totally centered in love, knowing that all that's so?
If I was knowing that all of that is true.
It's true, you're stuck with it.
Yes. And if I were centered in love, what would be what?
How would life be if you woke up in the morning and all the same things are true that you're talking about, and instead of this complex, obviously an old energy that's been around for a while, whatever we call the complex, rage, grief, fear, disappointment, if all of that were moved out of the way and you were just experiencing it from a state of pure being, do you suppose you might be able to see a way to live differently than your mind is showing you now with all this emotion in the way.
Theoretically, I can see that is the case.
Okay. And I'll just throw out another thought in there. You know, if we go to the opening words in the book of John, where they tell us, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. In Aramaic, that's not what it says. What it says in Aramaic is, in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. And
what?
You know,
in the
beginning, in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh.
Okay.
So, you know, there's one cell biologist, and in his laboratory, what he's shown is that when we think of thought, that thought produces a neuropeptide, a chemical, or pardon me, a molecule within the body. All of a sudden, it's non-physical, it's a thought, but it actually becomes a molecule. It's what they're showing in the lab. And then that molecule circulates around in the structure till it finds a cell with a receptor site that matches, and it lands on that cell. And if we were inside the cell, you know, their receptor sites are like little antenna on the cell, that neuropeptide comes along and goes, oh, I've got a key that fits in the lock of this cell. So it lands and inserts itself in the cell. If we were looking inside the cell at the energy that's inserted as that thought comes in, that's based in hostility or fear, what we would see entering the cell is what we call chemistry.
Okay.
Now, I don't recall in the several conversations we've had about this disorder that's going on, I don't recall them ever telling you that they knew what a cause was, just that, you know, there was excessive cerebral spinal fluid that was creating pressure on the brain, and they were trying to shunt that fluid off so that the pressure would go and you'd be more comfortable.
Yeah.
Can you conceive of a... Go ahead.
Yeah, they're not. They postulated that. And they've showed me the MRIs where you can see the ventricles are expanded, which means that there's too much fluid up there.
Too much pressure. Yeah. The
fluid is creating the pressure, and they've talked about one of the theories is that it comes from head trauma, like a concussion or three.
Right.
And I've had several. But they don't know. They scratch their heads at the rest of it. That's what really causes it.
Well, if you think about a cartoon that we've all seen 100 times, there's a guy who is facing something in his life, and the steam and the smoke is coming out of his ears, and he's about to blow his top.
Yeah.
Have you seen that cartoon?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah. Is it possible that the pressure that your brain is under, that there's a physical manifestation of, when we talk about how we're creators, is it possible that this uptight situation of frustration, again, I'm going to refer to it rather than just the grief, because we're really dealing with a more, you know, it's kind of like a soup that's been cooked together. There's grief in it, there's rage in it, there's fear in it, there's sadness in it, there's loss, there's hopelessness, there are all kinds of things going on with it. Can you imagine a world where maybe you're that cartoon character, and that chemistry coming into your structure might be at least a contributing factor to why there's this excess pressure building up?
Yeah, sure.
And do you think those who, you know, I mean, we can go back into, I can remember, you know, when I was a kid, cartoons, old cartoons, and here's this guy, and it's just, you know, the smoke's blowing out of his ears, and he's just in that state. And if you can imagine that maybe that's you, could you imagine a place where all the parts of you that hold tightly to create that kind of pressure can start to let go. And as they start to let go, that the concentrated pressure, which is showing up literally just like the cartoon character showing up in your head, that pressure starts to back off. And maybe as you learn to forgive, and it seems like, well, this is so physical, how could forgiveness have anything to do with it? My offering would be that forgiveness is the ability, it's a skill we're inviting people to develop, and this is something that I've developed the understanding of over the last 40 years or so of working with Yeshua's first century Aramaic forgiveness process. And what we're really asking people to do, instead of functioning out of the dynamics that are well established within themselves through their genes, through their life experiences, and it's just what's there and it's what runs the situation, and it's, in this case, it's that kind of buildup of pressure, including that rage that you spoke of. Could you imagine that if you could perhaps remove those energies, literally go into the cell, develop the skill and the ability to go into the cell where that neuropeptide has inserted itself and altered the chemistry of the cell and created this condition? Could you imagine yourself having the skill of literally being able to reach into your own cellular structure, and each time the mind energy of rage impinged on your cells and did damage there, that you could perhaps recapture that, pull that energy back out of the cell and dissolve, literally dissolve that neuropeptide, which is nothing more than a solidified thought of, some sort of pain, trauma, hopeless, helpless, whatever all the dynamics are. Could you imagine yourself getting to a point where you could do enough work to start to pull those energetic patterns out, so that literally, if I think about what you're experiencing, if I allow my physiology at this moment to generate or imagine generating that complex of emotion and the complex of thoughts or neuropeptides behind it, I can almost feel like my gut tightens, my pelvis tightens, my hands, my arms pull in, my chest tightens, and everything just kind of locks up, and that lock up, creating that pressure that's pushing up and creating a space where this excess fluid has nowhere to go because there's so much pressure holding on to it. Could you imagine yourself being able to remove those patterns one by one? It's a lifetime of patterns. If you remember back, I don't even remember how many years ago it was in Coeur d'Alene when we did the codependence to interdependence workshop. And I remember you being there and talking about the behavior of the power person and how shocked your mind was to realize that under stress, the dynamic that we exposed in that workshop, where under extreme stress, I do what my power person did to me that I hated the most. That habit creates a tension.
Under extreme stress, I do
what my power person did to me that I hated the most.
Okay. Yeah, I remember.
And with the few times that you've communicated to me around this, and a couple of days ago that there was so much rage coming up for you, and then today that rage coming up again, does that rage look anything like what your power person used to play out with you? Is this a generational habit? And when goals that you hold are frustrated, is that kind of your go-to emotion? Anger, rage, frustration?
I think I can see that, yeah.
So could you imagine yourself now, just like sitting at the pinnacle of going, rather than life has dealt me a hand, look what I've done, not look what I'm to blame for, or I'm guilty of, or I'm bad, or I'm wrong. Just, oh, I didn't know what I was doing to myself, so now I'm going to reverse the trend, and I'm going to start to undo that power person dynamic. I'm going to start to undo that response in me, and literally in undoing it, literally the skill that's developed is going back destructive mind energy by chunk of destructive mind energy right back to when, if Dad was a rager, I was there with my energy field wide open, just taking that rage in and creating that kind of pressure. It actually creates a state that's called sympathetic dominance, where blood is shunted to the large muscles and to the lungs to enable us to breathe deeper and to get ready to fight or run. And of course, if you think about, I remember watching the street, actually a power person dynamic that I had to work with was with my dad, and he had been brought up in the streets of Glasgow, Scotland, and it was pretty tough. And when I watched the movie, I don't know if you've seen it, The Streets of New York, I kind of got a taste, kind of got a sense. I was brought up in a whole different world than that Streets of New York or a street kid in Glasgow, Scotland. But I got a sense of why my dad carried the kind of rage that he carried, and how I became the object of it, and how at some point I had to come to terms with it and begin to forgive, literally, and not in any Greek sense of let somebody off the hook for it, but literally develop the ability to go inside myself and remove these energetic patterns that create this cellular tension that end up with, in your case, this particular disorder. And John, I can just say that I could imagine you stepping in and doing some deep work here, really tapping into this worksheet and developing ability to pull thought by thought, rageful thought by rageful thought, grief-stricken thought by grief-stricken thought, and your whole cellular structure starting to soften and open right down into your pelvis, right through your chest, and this pressure, this excess fluid, rather than being pushed into the cerebral spinal cavity and creating this excess pressure, letting go.
Okay.
Could you imagine that for yourself?
Yes, sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So to me, what it's going to entail you doing, and I'm saying this for projection because I've been there, done that. What it's going to entail you doing is yes.
Is this in the same general arena as Bruce Lipton's The Biology of Belief?
That's it exactly. Change your perception, change your chemistry. It's Bruce that proved that the thought becomes a neuropeptide, lands on a cell, and inserts itself in the cell and becomes chemistry. And when I have the ability to recapture that, literally that neuropeptide, that molecule that's stuck in those receptor sites in that cell, when I can pull that out, I'm literally extracting chemistry from the cell. If you imagine, take your right hand, if you would, and kind of make a half a fist. It's open, your fingers are open, and then take your other hand and imagine interlacing your fingers, and watch how the tips of your left fingers from your left hand move inside the pocket that you're forming with your right hand.
Yeah.
And that's a picture of the cell with a neuropeptide, an assault neuropeptide coming into it, and your fingers would represent the chemistry that disturbed the cell. And forgiveness would be the ability, literally, to extract, to recapture, to pull that neuropeptide, literally that molecule, out of the cell. And as you do, with the demonstration you were going with your hands, as you pull the fingers in the left hand away from the right hand, that chemistry is extracted from your right hand, from that cell. And the cell can go back to a balanced function.
Okay.
And so I could see, John, where if you can recognize perhaps how your structure has found itself in the position that it's in, and that, yes, there is a mindset where you can be a victim of it and go, oh, well, this is just my lot in life now, there's nothing I can do about it. Or, I can see, perhaps, I'm not saying this is absolute fact, but for me it sounds a whole lot more hopeful than, oh, well, this is my lot in life and I'm stuck with it. I can see where, as you can remove, again, thought by thought, in cases going right back to the moment where Dad raged and your tissue structure tightened in response to it. And as you recapture those energetic patterns and realizing yourself as the presence of love, not that self that your father told you were, your power person, whoever that was, told you were, but realizing yourself as love, that you can literally start to delete all of that energetic pattern. And my offering would be you can rebuild your whole cerebral spinal fluid system.
Oh.
The whole cerebral spinal cavity, right up into the brain, that can be restructured, because there's nothing permanent about its condition. Its expression at this moment is this, because they're the energetic patterns that are in it. You know, if I'm sitting watching TV, we'll go back a few years because the TVs aren't quite that vulnerable these days, but if I'm sitting watching TV and somebody pulls into my driveway with a car, all of a sudden the expression on my TV set is a mess. It's rolling, it's flipping. Remember when TVs used to roll sideways? It's snowy and I can hardly hear it. Now, I can struggle with the TV forever, but until I remove that, shut that engine off out there that's creating that signal, the expression is going to be distorted. And right now, your expression, your physiology, is certainly distorted. And according to the way the medical world would look at it, it's a permanent condition, nothing you're going to do about it, you're just going to live with it. My offering is it's not a permanent condition. It is a state of your energy system at this moment, but a consistent, persistent effort to reverse all those years of rage and tightening, closing down the spaces, which increases the pressure. By reversing that, the spaces get to relax and the pressure goes down and your brain returns to normal.
Okay.
Now, of course, to do that, all you're going to have to do is handle every moment of rage you've ever had in your life, and maybe a few from your genes and maybe a few from your power person. But hell's bells, it sounds like a whole lot better than just sitting around going, oh, well, this is just the way it is. I'm powerless. Because you've got power over this. You're going to have to develop new skills. The skill of removing rather than just going along with what's already stuck in the cells. When that rage comes up, when that grief, whatever, all the aspects of that complex of emotion that's there, when it comes up, that rather than just falling into it, buying into it, and letting it run you back from it, you kind of become the thinker apart from the thought, the feeler apart from the feeling, the actor apart from the actions, and you go, gee, I can feel that tension in my feet. I can feel that tension in my groin. Yeah, I can feel it in my chest. I can feel it in the back of my neck. And this energy's not good for me. This energy's destroying me.
Yeah.
So am I willing to touch into what's at the root of this energy and set a new path for my life of every time it comes up, I stop, I soften, I let loose of it, I let it go free.
Okay.
How's your back doing these days?
It was. It's mildly symptomatic. Of course, I've gained weight in the last couple months, which doesn't help. It's mild symptomatic.
Okay. So then.
For a long time.
Go ahead, say it again.
It had no symptoms for a long time.
So do you remember when those symptoms shifted? I do, because we were in a conversation about it and you were laid low in your bed with such excruciating back pain that you couldn't walk.
Uh-huh.
And I remember the day
Yeah,
you sent me a text while you were watching Dr. Sarno's video, All the Rage. And in your text, if I remember correctly, I think I can quote, your words were, "Damn, this pain is caused by me."
Uh-huh.
And you let loose. My assessment of what you did that day and other days that you did that work is you were literally pulling those neuropeptides out of the tissue in your low back. And, you know, what had laid you up for years was gone.
I don't know. Don't say.
Well, I'm thinking back to when we were communicating about that. I think you were laying on the bed and you were texting me as you watched All the Rage, and you had the insight that you were the cause, that it was what you were doing with your thinking that produced that pain in your back.
I remember
and
reading Sarno's book 20 years ago. I don't remember All the Rage. Yeah, I do remember reading the book some time ago.
Well, I'm going to, just give me a second here. I am looking. I'm actually going back through my text because you sent me a text. I recall it. There'll be people who are listening to the radio show will recall it because it was live when I was on the show when you sent me that text.
Okay.
And I'm looking for that text. I know I didn't delete it.
That wouldn't be the first time I'd forgotten something.
Well, yeah, I hear you. I'm just looking through my text. We've been communicating quite a bit over the last couple of years, John. But you and I were communicating by text as you were watching that video. And I'm breathing as we do this. Oh, here it is. I just found it. So you might remember communicating with me about I had told you that the movie that was going to cost you $5, and I was incorrect. You told me this would only cost me $5, and it was $5.95, tongue in cheek. And then here's the text that you sent me, and this is on. Let's see. This is the first of the 27th of January in 2020.
Oh.
And you're watching All the Rage. I had suggested that. And here's what you texted me. 35 minutes into it, and my back starts to ache, as it usually does. And I remember, oh, that's the rage in my mind body. That's just rage or anger. And damn, the pain goes away. LOL.
Oh, how about that?
So I am copying that
Good
text, and I just sent it to you, so you'll get it on your phone any second. So you've done this once and I remember it was over a period of many months that we talked about how debilitating your back pain was, excruciatingly so. And, I remember you telling me how you couldn't even get up off the bed.
Yeah.
And there was your insight. This is my rage. Just like the cartoon character with the steam blowing out his ears with that. And you change that back pain. John, you can change the situation of your cerebral spinal fluid the same way.
Okay. Cool. I'm all for it.
But you're going to have to change the mind energy that you have allowed to run your physiology. You're going to have to, every time it comes up and you want to go into that kind of mindset, and just, think about that response. And if you just think about that response, what does your whole body do? It responds. And you're going to have to refuse that inclination and instead look at the circumstance and the goal you're holding for life at that moment. And
every time I feel grief or hurt or upset or sadness about my life
whole complex.
condition, yeah,
correct.
At that point, I do what?
You can do the same thing as you did with your excruciating back pain back in 2020.
Okay.
You can alleviate the pressure of that. At that point, it was from your lower spine, and my offering would be that rage that you touched into and went, wow, when I realized it was my rage, the pain went away. That's part of the complex. You know, the cerebral spinal fluid goes right down through the whole spine, and the locking up of that tissue that created that excruciating pain, that's part of what has constricted the cerebral spinal, the space in which the cerebral spinal fluid flows. And you know, if you take any container and it's got, you know, X amount of fluid in it, and then you shrink the container by 20%, what has to happen? The pressure in the container has to go up 20%. So
okay.
I'm offering that day, and you know, you can read that text to yourself whenever you need to be reminded. You wrote it. Damn, that's my rage, and the pain went away. LOL. You laughed about it.
Okay. All right, I shall.
And the consistent, persistent way of getting into deeper and deeper places rather than just a surface. Oh, that's my rage and I can let it go, boom. As you become more specific, and that's where the worksheet takes you, as you go into and look at what's the goal I hold. You know, gee, here I am laying on this bed with excruciating back pain, and I want to just be able to comfortably get up and go to the bathroom, and I am so pissed. Where does that energy go but right to where the pain is?
How do I do the rest of this work?
Okay, so let's just carry on then. So you're at the point where we're looking at punishment. So if you were to, you know, thinking of life as a person in this circumstance when your mind is in this complex of emotional energies and thought energies, what would you do? How would you lash out at life? What would your punishment be?
I've thought of suicide,
Yeah.
ending my life.
Right. So that's that would be the punishment for life. Number 1E is what's my punishment toward life, and punishment toward myself would be the same, suicide.
Yeah.
So then you'll see that there's
I've not thought of suicide as a punishment. I've thought about, okay, if this thing continues and I start going into dementia, I don't want to be around for that.
Right.
Because this disease it does go into dementia, or
right.
can, and I don't want to be around for that.
Right.
I don't sit around and contemplate suicide.
I got it.
Okay.
Yep. But then think of this again, this whole complex that I'm referring to of anger, rage, grief, loss, hopelessness, all of that a part of that complex, a part of that stew that's cooked in is, well, then I'll just get out of here. I'll commit suicide. And that would be just one more piece of mind energy that would create deleterious chemistry in the cell that neuropeptide lands on. And so one by one, you want to touch in and remove those things, acknowledge them. And so the next step, you'll see there's a checkbox for the release and surrender. So The first checkbox, I release and surrender myself, my emotions, my story, my thoughts, and punishment to love. And I cancel my need to be right, to make up another story out of these brain cells, to hallucinate proof that my fear and hostility-based story, my reality is true. So am I willing to surrender all of this power person energy, all of this rage and pain? Am I willing to surrender it to love? Am I willing to bring it forward? You know, there's a wonderful line in the Course in Miracles that says, bring the world you do not want to the one you do.
Okay.
And obviously the one you do want is one of serenity, peace, connectedness, and a joyful life. So can you tap into the part of you that is that serenity? You know, it's interesting in the Aramaic where they say that Yeshua says, my peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. The word wasn't peace in Aramaic, it was serenity. So can you imagine stepping into this space of serenity and allowing all of this old complex weaved from the earliest of childhood and weaved for you genetically before you ever came into the body, that you start to embrace that and start to process through it. Remove it, literally forgive it, literally removing it from the neuropeptides from your cellular structure. And the show, we're coming to the end of the hour, so maybe we can pick this up tomorrow, John, and continue. I've got quite a bit to digest already.
What time you want me to call tomorrow?
1 o'clock. 1 o'clock. The show, Dr. Tim does the first hour from noon to 1, and then from 1 till 2. So we'll just hold the space for you for tomorrow, and at 1 o'clock we'll continue this conversation, my friend.
That's I got my calendar out here. January 19th.
If the show cuts us off, it's going to automatically cut us off, John. So I may lose you, but if I do,
you say 1 o'clock?
1 o'clock tomorrow. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Let's pick up right from here and carry on the conversation.
Thank you, Michael.
Awesome, my friend. Appreciate you. Blessings.